Sheriff Martinez, I guess kind of to start things off with, immigration is the hot button issue here in our community, if not nationally, with everything that's going on. Where does San Diego County stand, big picture issues on this, before we start diving into the nitty gritty of things?
Yeah, so we follow state law. The SB 54 has been in place for a while now. Trust Act, Truth Act, Values Act, all of those things were in place long before this administration, and we follow that. Local law enforcement doesn't enforce immigration. We don't ask immigration status, and the same stands for the sheriff.
I guess also with this too, have you been in contact with ICE or DHS about their involvement here in our county?
Yeah, so we've always had a really good relationship here in San Diego County. Local, state, federal law enforcement always have talked to each other. That's what we really point to for keeping our community safe. That's continued throughout this, talking to those leaders here locally pretty frequently. As a matter of fact, we're going to a meeting in a little while. It's a regular monthly meeting just to have those conversations.
Okay, so you have spoken to them within these last, 2 weeks since the new administration had taken office. What were those conversations like?
Just really notifying us when they're going to be doing things, what their position has been, sort of explaining. I know there's a lot of community concerns that Border Patrol's out lurking in front of schools, things like that. So just answering those questions.
What have they told you that they've been are going to do or have been doing in our community?
Yeah, so a lot of it I think is just misinformed. Border Patrol's not sitting in front of schools waiting to enforce immigration. They're not walking around hospital corridors and things like that. They're out actively targeting criminal immigrants that they're interested in deporting.
You had mentioned the misinformation. So to be clear, they are not going into schools. They're not going into churches.
Right.
They're not going into these places that were formerly deemed safe zones in our communities when it comes to any type of deportation efforts.
That's what they're telling me, right. And we haven't seen that.
And what have you seen when it comes to these enforcement actions by ICE and DHS here in our community?
It's my understanding that they have people that they're looking for. They've created targets of individuals who have criminal convictions or involved in criminal activity that also have an immigration nexus, and so those are the folks that they're looking for.
Have you seen this target list by chance?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. And what parts of the county are they reaching? I mean, I know we've seen videos on social media. Have you seen the videos on social media of the various enforcement actions?
I haven't, and I don't have any specifics for you, so I think you should probably ask them about those types of questions.
I know you had mentioned SB 54 and that you will not have sheriff's deputies enforce federal immigration acts. Have you been asked by ICE and DHS to have deputies do such actions?
No, but I do know that generally there is an interest in adding to the workforce of ICE and some of the work that they're doing. In San Diego County, I won't be participating in law enforcement actions enforcing immigration.
Humor me, why is that?
It's not my authority, and I honestly, as a sheriff, I have enough to do. I have my own responsibilities and priorities. My primary mission is community safety, and that's maintaining the jails and a number of other things.
Are you worried about any repercussions going down the line coming from Washington or the administration or any federal authority about not involving deputies into federal immigration enforcement?
Really what I'm focusing on is just following the law. And in California, the law is very clear on what I can and cannot do.
You brought up the jails. To the best of your knowledge, do we know of any undocumented individuals who are currently in San Diego jails, and do you plan to share that information with federal immigration authorities?
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll take a couple of minutes and explain what the law says,
Please do.
What's permissible under California law and what the sheriff does. So in California, the law is very clear. I don't ask immigration status, so when someone is booked into my jail, I don't ask them their immigration status or their country of origin. Actually, I take that back. We do sometimes ask their place of birth, but we don't ask their immigration status. If there's someone in my custody that ICE has an interest in regarding immigration issues, they'll notify our office and let us know that there's an individual they have an interest in interviewing. we'll notify that individual in their native language that ICE has an interest in talking to them. They have to consent to that interview. That consent is done in writing, and they're allowed to have an attorney present if they consent to speak with ICE. ICE, if consent is given, ICE is able to come to my facility and act as any other professional visitor, just like an attorney or someone else who would do an interview in my jail. They can conduct an interview of that individual in my facility. Once that interview is complete, if they are interested in that individual, their release date, I have to make sure that that individual qualifies under state law with a qualifying conviction. Those are things like rape, robbery, murder, domestic violence, drug trafficking, those types of crimes. If they have that qualifying conviction, I can notify ICE of their release date. I then go back and notify the individual that I've told ICE their release date. If ICE is interested in taking custody of that individual upon release, they'll come to my jail on the date of their release, and we'll facilitate that transfer.
Say they were convicted of a lesser crime, say it was anything below rape, robbery, murder, drug trafficking, and ICE had notified you of this person's immigration status, would that kickstart the same policies and procedures that you had just laid out?
So it has to be a qualifying conviction, and state law is very clear. There's a whole list of things. Some are more minor than the ones that I listed. If they don't meet one of those qualifying convictions in their history, then I don't give ICE their release date.
Okay. I guess also with this as well, I know prior to the new administration coming in, there was a resolution passed by the Board of Supervisors essentially saying that we are not going to be complying in any way, shape, or form when it comes to immigration enforcement, immigration status, when it comes to, any type of authority. And then you had your statement saying that you were going to follow state law. Is this still the status quo of the Sheriff's Office and the County Board of Supervisors in that relationship, or has anything changed whatsoever?
Yeah, so another thing to be clear, and it's important to understand, is that I have a good relationship with our Board of Supervisors. They brought a board action, former Chairwoman Vargas brought a board action which was voted on by the board with the restrictions that you put out. The board doesn't set policy for the sheriff. I have sole authority over policy in the jails. So I made a statement, and the intent of that statement was really for the community, so that the community understood what I was going to do and what I wasn't going to do, what my authority was and is. And as I said, my policy hasn't changed. I'm continuing to do that.
Have you spoken to staff at all levels from top to bottom down about what they should be doing when it comes to interacting with federal immigration authorities? Given this day and age and climate, some people may just be reaching out for the sanctity of maybe trying to tip off or inform of anything when it comes to anybody who might be an undocumented migrant in our community. I mean, what are you instructing your staff to do during this time?
Nothing different than we've been doing for years. We have very clear policy following state law and state guidelines with SB 54. Our deputies know when, and we don't enforce immigration, so we don't tip off Border Patrol. We don't provide Border Patrol any information related to someone's immigration status. We do work with our federal partners on state law violations, things like drug trafficking. We have a very robust relationship at the border for drug trafficking investigations, things like that. We're on a number of task forces with our federal partners. None of those task forces have anything to do with immigration. They're all state and federal law violations related to other issues.
Have you heard of any immigration enforcement happening in our county within the last 2 weeks?
I don't have any specific information about immigration enforcement. Like I said, we have different lanes. Border Patrol does their jobs. They don't ask us to assist with those, so I don't get their operational information.
Okay. And no heads up or notification from DHS or ICE?
No, and there wouldn't normally be a reason to. They haven't in the past, and there's no reason to with this change.
And I guess when those individuals are apprehended by DHS or ICE in immigration enforcement, for folks who may be undocumented, where are they going? Are they going to a federal holding facility, or are they going to our jails?
They go to a federal holding facility. We don't hold immigrant detainees in my jail.
Is there any way that would change?
No.
No pressure from outside, or space
State
isn't available?
law is very clear that I don't use my jail facilities for that purpose. So I think federal authorities are actively looking for places where they will be able to increase their holding capacity, but it won't be in the jail.
Immigration is obviously a very hot button issue, very, I guess you could say it's a matchstick in any conversation when it comes to this administration, where things stand politically. Folks may hear answers and think that if it's any which way inching towards enforcing immigration, that we are following the orders of what's coming from the Trump administration and the White House. What is your message to the community that you are following what the state law says? You are not having deputies enforce federal immigration enforcement. What is your message to folks who may hear this and still maybe think that way?
You know, it's very important to me, my relationship with our communities. We have very large migrant communities in my jurisdiction, that I'm responsible for protecting as well. Community safety is important. It's important that people trust deputy sheriffs and know that deputy sheriffs aren't going to enforce immigration, because I need individuals in our community to come forward if they're victims of crime, if they're witnesses of crime. They need to be able to trust deputies to be able to do that. So a deputy will never ask your immigration status. Deputies are there to help. So I hope that we'll continue having those conversations in our communities. We're doing a lot of outreach with our immigrant communities and answering those questions.
I guess at what point is there any pressure from the feds that would supersede any state law? Is there anything in your mind that would ever change anything like that? Because I know there's obviously the constructs of local, state, and federal, and which laws as you, as the head of the sheriff's office, have to follow.
Right. State law is really what governs what I do in California. So right now, I don't see our state legislators or state leadership changing their position with the current state law. So, and I'm comfortable that it strikes the right balance. It allows me to talk to ICE regarding people who have criminal convictions who are in my custody and release those individuals to ICE. So I'm comfortable with that arrangement.
And just for my own clarification, you have monthly meetings with ICE and DHS. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, regionally, as I said, local, state, and
Okay.
federal law enforcement all work together. So we have a regular meeting with all of the leadership of law enforcement in the region. So they're part of that group.
Okay. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I had that as a clarity point. And I guess, again, just to reiterate, have you or has your office been contacted by ICE or DHS about what enforcement actions are happening in our community?
No.
No. And do you foresee that changing? Do you anticipate them reaching out to you and telling you or giving you a heads up on where these enforcement actions might be happening?
You know, not really. I mean, no more than I would call them and tell them where I'm serving a search warrant.
Okay.
So we're just very different. We have very different responsibilities, and we stay in our lanes.
And when it comes to the asking of inmates at various county jails in regards to immigration status, or if ICE can come in and interview people, do you see that process changing anytime soon? Or is there at any point where, I know you had mentioned that given severities of the crimes, which would automatically, kickstart that, but allowing ICE into the jail cells, do you foresee any operation of that changing?
You would have to change under state law.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess in closing, it's only been, 15 days, maybe 14 or so, given whenever the days since the new administration. Given that we were just very at the early on of the precipice, how do you as a county sheriff continue to navigate these waters where things are constantly changing? It's unknown territory. We're seeing new developments each and every day, when it seems that, immigration is a hot button topic and issue for this administration.
You know, we've navigated a lot of this before. I think for all of us to just kind of keep cool heads and understand what the laws are and what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and then what our community needs are.
How have things changed between one administration to the next?
Well, clearly immigration is a priority of this administration. I think deporting people with criminal backgrounds or criminal histories, criminal investigations ongoing is a huge priority. So I think a lot of our community agrees with that position. So we'll see how we navigate this moving forward.
I guess also with this, I guess in closing, I know you had mentioned that you as a sheriff have plenty of other things to do on your mind. I mean, and within the community, again, your message to the community that the sheriff's office is following the state law and that whatever is announced or pushed forward by the White House, isn't superseding state law?
Right. I think that's a very good message. I think it's a good message for our communities to understand that the Sheriff's Department is here to help. My primary mission is public safety, and that's for everyone in our communities. It's not just for specific individuals. So everyone should feel comfortable coming forward. If they're the victim of a crime or witness to a crime, they should feel comfortable talking to deputies.
Okay. So always my last question in closing, is there anything else you'd like to add, something we haven't asked you when it comes to the Sheriff's Office immigration policies, dealing with federal enforcement actions, deputies being involved in federal enforcement actions, anything like that?
Just really to make sure that people understand immigration enforcement is a federal authority, not a local authority. And it's my plan to just continue with the way that we've been doing things here in the state.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you.